Hi there, and welcome on the journey to transform culture. I'm Steve, and I'll be your guide. Well, folks, hope you're having a fantastic day and even more fantastic week. It's sunny out, grass is green, leaves are trying to bloom, and spring is trying to sprung, right? Well, folks, today let's jump into a topic. I might have to break this up a little bit to get it done, but I'm going to call this one the messy stuff, right? Because I'm going to talk about a few different things. It doesn't matter if we're talking about organizations, your team within organizations, the organization as large, us as individuals, relationships, friendships, friend groups, community, civic organizations, a religious institution, you name it, wherever people can go, right? Wherever people are, there's always going to be a level of some messy stuff, right? And in conflict, let me just impart on you something I put in the book, and that was to do with conflict. Some people like conflict. They run toward conflict and drama and toxicity. They may not always be the one that are creating the conflict, the drama, the toxicity. They definitely run toward it, and they always have something to say about it rather than putting it, in a neat little bow and putting it over there so it doesn't get on anybody else, right? They oftentimes will spread it. It's rumor control, right? And we've all been the uh, the negative benefactors of rumor control, right? And how do you know things are rumor control? Well, just look at the flow of how things work. Somebody stops working somewhere and departs. Individuals, could be one, could be a few, start to say, well, so and so did this and so did that, which, it's one thing if functionally, hey, this is what they made, a decision they made or whatever. There's legitimacy in that. But when it starts to be disparaging, or it's negative things that lean into disparaging, right, into the disparaging side of the house, this is where we start getting into the messy stuff, right? Because any new team members coming in there, are going to be going, oh, wow, well, that person must not have didn't have their stuff together. That's number one. Number two, these people waited till that person left to bring it up in a lot of cases, right? So there's that. There's a sign of a communication issue that was inherent probably somewhere along the line. And not only a communication problem from that perspective, but, from a closure perspective, but also from a perspective of exacerbation and a deflecting, right? And this is where triangulation comes in, and nobody becomes accountable except the person who isn't there anymore, right? So it doesn't matter if it's the person, if it's a group of people, but one way that you can surely keep this triangulation, this negative, toxic, traumatic triangulation alive, it's by never truly getting a grip on your retention slash your turnover rate, right? If you're constantly churning out, 8% to 40%, depending on who you are, industry you're in, and so forth, then if you're constantly in this churn, then you've got to kind of do a little reflection on your organization, on your team, because who is served by turnover, these turnovers going on? Are there leadership members, right? It could be a leadership team, it could be functionals too. Are these folks using the broader team as kind of scapegoats to bad decisions or failed projects, et cetera, et cetera? And then saying, well, we can't get good help here. Well, you certainly cannot get great help or sustain and build your team if you're not developing them, if you're not molding them. And keep in mind, the organization is one that hired them. right? So who's doing the hiring? So you can see where this onion just keeps getting peeled further and further back. Eventually, as we talked about in the previous video, root cause, or a few videos ago, root cause. What's the root cause of your churn, of your turnover of employees? What's the root cause of your failure to retain good leaders and functionals and staff members as well, right? What is the root cause? Well, they didn't align. There are times when alignment is there. There are times when people, those team members, leaders, functionals, and others, make the decision to move along because of the alignment, because of philosophical or I guess you could say they're unaligned with the organization's way of doing business, right? If there's a quality issue, poor quality, poor attentiveness to customers, then absolutely some folks will look for an opportunity and scoot right out because they see that, wow, this organization doesn't really have a great quality policy. Maybe the products are not only poor quality, but maybe they're hazardous and dangerous too, right? And people don't want to be associated. So you can't paint with a broad brush and say, well, that's the reason for high turnover and poor retention, right? Both sides of the same coin. You can't just broad stroke that and say that that's every organization's problem. Some may have that problem, and some it's the messy stuff, right? It's the codependence, it's the toxic drama, managing from the middle, it's the narcissistic leader or covert narcissistic team members, and so on and so forth. And we have a lot of this to deal with and deflect. But you can't just sit back and be kind of be tossed to and fro in the storm of the messy stuff. You have to deal with the messy stuff. Highly recommend my book. You can get it electronically for nearly nothing. And for this reason, because I address some of this in there at greater length, but essentially you can't let stuff go unaddressed. A. B. You can't be wielding the hammer of doom to deal with it either. Now, don't mistake that for not holding people accountable. That's different. I'm talking about with a hammer of doom. Don't go around, just start, firing people and start just doing all kinds of wild stuff to that degree. Because you don't know, because you haven't done the root cause analysis. You haven't figured out what's going on. And even after that, people can make mistakes. Not everything is nefarious. So there's another reason why you don't want to run around with the big, hammer of doom, right? But how much easier is it for some site leaders and other leaders in general just to, brush people off their organization and go, oh, well, we'll find another person that does that. The tough part about that is those individuals know what occurred. Those individuals know what occurred in that organization. So it's not like they don't have friends and family in the communities and so forth and so on. And those people can communicate. And you think about when we talked about the red domino, effect, the red domino of doom effect. Essentially, you're going down negative marketing when you're starting to do knee-jerk overhauls like that without going in and cleaning up your system. A lot of times what you see is this big swath of people leaving, and some by choice, but not all. And then you see the organization dive into, okay, let's restructure how we handle and address how we handle. No, to gain credibility, you need to do that while those people are there. Because how you build trust and credibility is to say, oh, well, we didn't account for this, and to own your part of it, as leaders and owners and so forth. Own your part of the situation and go, okay, and this is what we're going to do now. We're going to shift. And there are organizations that do that, but there are many who don't. And the smaller you are, the less likely that does occur. because in a lot of small business mindset is, I don't really have time to deal with all of the parsing. Well, there's a level of truth there. You don't have a lot of time, which is why setting your organization up and making it more systemically sound benefits you. Standardizing the stuff that you need to benefits you. And for people who poo poo the quality manuals and all this kind of stuff, look, anything to standardize was never going to hurt you unless you aren't doing the work as you describe it in your documentation, your policies, processes, and procedures. If your team members are not following the policies, processes, and procedures, and let's just say the leadership as well, if you're not following that stuff, then you have to take ownership. Are you teaching it? Is there a training modality involved? Is there, I can just start peeling it into this. And this is part of what lends itself to the messy stuff. The messy stuff just doesn't appear. A lot of times the messy stuff occurs because you didn't standardize, you didn't communicate clearly, you're not doing the proper training, you don't even have potentially very good on the job training or in house training. Potentially it's not very formalized and it's not very effective. It's not, say, standardized, right? So you got an employee over here who gets trained, one over here doesn't. You get all these incongruities. And that can also happen when you're a smaller organization too, because you may only have one person wearing 3 or 4 hats trying to juggle that and other things too, which isn't always the best thing. It's not always impossible if that person's very competent. But again, what's your relief valve? If your relief valve is that the messy stuff starts to come around and build up and there are cracks and creaks in your boat, then, you got to kind of do the root cause analysis. People will slip through those cracks. That's why you got to tighten that up. You got to make that, make your organization ship shape, right? Got to close those cracks. You don't have leaks, leaks in your standardization, leaks in your quality. You don't want to be providing and doing product and service that's unsafe. It doesn't matter if you're doing paperwork. If that paperwork, that coding, that documentation, if all these things are, fail to meet the standards that they're supposed to, it could literally mean the lives of people, your end users of your product and or service, as well as many dollars lost, even beyond loss of life, potentially, and damage, and people getting hurt, to major equipment failures and loss of revenue on that side of the house, which can result in slowdowns for your customers' business as well. So this red domino of doom, it can really can generate from many elements of this messy stuff, right? And this is definitely an arena where standardization is highly encouraged. The more you standardize, and so many people are afraid of systems. Well, systems, they slow me down. Look, you spend some time, it's like a plan. You're going on a road trip from the east to the west coast, west to east, whatever. You're going from coast to coast. You don't just jump in the car and take off, right? You just don't show up at work and do stuff. You have a plan, right? And if you don't have a plan, you should have a plan. Every week should be planned out. This is basically what we have for our plan and where we expect to be and so on and so forth. And you should have that, right? It just doesn't, if your workforce is showing up Monday morning, we'll just use Monday morning. You're showing up Monday morning and then they realize what they have to do. No, have that work lined out, the previous week and let them know what's on the schedule. A lot of organizations will have posted schedules and so forth and so on, but not all do. So you're behind the curve if people are showing up just to do stuff, just to do work without really knowing what they're making and all. You're not, look, they're not going to jump right into it in 15 minutes. You're lucky if they're going to have their head wrapped around it in the first 30 to 40 minutes. Because there might be materials they need, all these things. These are all areas where pre-planning, planning, and setting your team up for success is so critical. And I don't even care what you do. I don't care if there is 2 or more of you, then this applies. period. I mean, it actually applies if there's just one of you, right? If you're doing your own thing, you want to do this for yourself, because whatever you make easier for yourself today is going to make tomorrow easier, and so on and so forth. So you want to have a sight line, you want to have a vision. And organizations who poo-poo vision, look, you got to have a vision. What is the vision for your product and service, right? What is the vision for your organization to grow and to improve and to, build on its culture and all these things? What is your vision internal to your sites? What is your vision as a department? What is your vision as a member of a small team if you're a lead, for example? And what's your vision if you're team members, right? You just keep going down, down, down. What's your vision once you leave work? You have to have a vision for your life as well, right? You have to have some kind of vision, even if it's to avoid, a bunch of the the drama and toxicity and all that's within culture. That's it's a legitimate planning or preparation or an awareness within your vision, right? My vision is to live a peaceful life and to avoid as much toxic drama as possible. That's a legitimate vision. So, or portion of a vision. You should have more to it than that. But that is one element that could be part of your personal vision, is to have a peaceful organizational culture. And how do we make that happen? Well, we build it from the ground up. We build it through developing our people, having good communication. We're standardized. We keep in communication with our customers. Our customers don't have to keep calling us and keep emailing us to find out what the status of something is. It's our job, not the customer's job, to do our work, right? To do our work is not the customer's job. So this is why it's so important that we don't let the messy stuff linger, that we get into the root cause of the messy stuff. We make corrective actions, and those corrective actions aren't always punitive, right? In fact, 80% of the time, if not more, they should be one where you do retraining and you do, and it serves as an opportunity to grow. Does life flight helicopter go by? Serves as an opportunity to grow and to get better, right? So why would you fire 5 people that, you didn't have standardized processes, and then they kind of spilled off the beaten path, maybe not intentionally, right? Say it was a mistake that was made or a cascade of failures. Well, fix the cascade of failures, because just getting rid of 1 or 2 people is not going to make your organization better. It's not, period. Because those 1 or 2 are a result, like it or not, of the organization, their hiring, sitting down, doing the interview process, finding out, people got the same, are they aligned with the culture we have here? Do they, want to get on board with that? Is this a place for them? And are we a place for them? And are they somebody we want, right? Sorry, I just saw an owl go up into that tree over there. That's pretty cool. A big one too. But anyway, so just wanted to touch a little bit on the messy stuff. I get into a lot more detail in my book. And also my system that I put together also helps to address a lot of this out of the gate, so you don't have, essentially where you can standardize your team as they come into your into the flow of your organization. Once you get your organization on the same page, then as you get new team members. So I've done this to make it easier, so you don't have to keep reinventing the wheel every time you have more team members come on board, or to be able to sustain your current team and ensure that things don't start slipping through the cracks, right? All right, folks, just a little conversation today on the messy stuff. Didn't get into I could have made this an hour long and got into some real big weeds, and maybe I'll break it up into chunks and do other facets of the messy stuff. Maybe I'll call this the messy stuff part 1. All right, folks, remember to hit that good domino 3 to 5 times a day to uplift, motivate, inspire, and just encourage folks. And when you do that, not only are we helping to transform culture for the better, right, but we're helping to transform our own lives. And that's an amazing thing. All right, folks, have a fantastic day. Hit like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, we'll talk to you later.